There's a silent addiction that most of us mistake for intelligence. We call it high-level curiosity, but in reality, it often looks a lot like a cage. Take a look around your room right now. Or better yet, look at your browser history. Look at your bookshelf. How many of those books are only a quarter of the way through? How many of those online courses have you actually completed? There is likely a dusty guitar in the corner, a half-finished coding project on your hard drive, and a subscription to a language learning app that you haven't opened in 3 weeks. Have you ever met someone who wants to learn everything? One week they are deep diving into the mechanics of Python, the next they are obsessed with Roman military history. By the end of the month, they've bought a high-end camera because they need to understand the psychology of light. At first glance, it is impressive. It looks like a mind that is simply too big for just one topic. We admire these people. We call them polymaths. We call them Renaissance men. But if you look closer, there's a pattern here that is much more unsettling. These people know the basics of 1,000 things, but they haven't finished a single one. Psychology suggests this isn't actually a love for learning. It's a loop. It's a sophisticated psychological trap that keeps your brain stuck in a state of infinite potential without ever achieving a single actual result. You're essentially a collector of beginnings. You're high on the feeling of being about to start, but you're a complete stranger to the satisfaction of completion. The reason we fall into this trap is simpler and more biological than you think. Novelty is a drug. When you start a new skill, your brain releases a massive surge of dopamine. Everything is fresh. Every 5-minute tutorial feels like a breakthrough, and you feel like a genius. This is the dopamine high of the beginner. In this phase, you are conquering the easiest 10% of a craft. You're picking the low-hanging fruit. Because you're starting from zero, the growth curve is vertical. You go from knowing nothing to knowing something in a matter of hours. This gives you the maximum psychological reward for the minimal possible effort. But then, you hit the plateau. This is the inevitable moment where the fun stops and the real work begins. This is where the learning curve flattens. Suddenly, the guitar strings hurt your fingers, the code doesn't run, and you have to spend 4 hours looking for a single misplaced comma. The history books get dense, dry, and full of dates that you keep forgetting. Your brain, which has become addicted to that initial easy dopamine hit, starts looking for a way out. It doesn't want to master the hard stuff, it wants to find a new beginner's high. So you convince yourself you've learned enough to get the gist. You tell yourself that the last 90% isn't really necessary. You buy a new book on a new topic, and the cycle repeats. You aren't actually learning, you're chasing a biological spark. You are a dopamine tourist, visiting different skills but never actually living in any of them. But there's a deeper, quieter, and much darker reason why we jump from topic to topic. Psychology calls it ego protection. As long as you're a beginner in 20 different things, you have a perfect ironclad excuse for not being great at any of them. If you actually committed to one thing, if you spent 3 years mastering just one craft, you would eventually have to face the possibility of failure. You would have to put your ego on the line and see if you actually have what it takes to be elite. By staying a jack of all trades, you protect yourself from the pain of being judged. When someone asks why you aren't a world-class coder or a professional musician, you can say, "Oh, I have too many interests to focus on just one." You tell yourself, "I could be a master if I wanted, I just choose to be broad." In reality, this is often productive procrastination. You're staying busy to avoid the fear of being average. You're accumulating knowledge like a hoarder, but you're not using it to build a life. You are a collector of starts, but a complete stranger to finishes. You have all the potential in the world, but potential that isn't realized is just a fancy word for nothing. This constant jumping creates a fragmented self. Every time you quit a project at the 60% mark, you're training your brain that the hard part is where we stop. You're building a psychological habit of retreat. Over time, your confidence begins to erode. You start to suspect that you aren't actually curious, you're just afraid. You're afraid that if you go deep, you'll find out that you don't have what it takes. So, how do we break the loop? How do we move from being a collector of beginnings to an architect of endings? Psychologists suggest a strategy called the T-shaped mind. Think of the letter T. The horizontal bar represents your broad interests. It is perfectly okay to be curious about the world. Curiosity is a gift, and a wide perspective allows you to connect ideas that specialists miss. But you must have that vertical line. The vertical line represents depth. It represents the one thing that you do not quit when it gets boring. It represents the craft that defines you. To build a T-shaped mind, you have to embrace the suck. You have to accept that the middle phase of learning any skill is going to be painful, repetitive, and completely devoid of dopamine. You have to stop looking for the feeling of growth and start looking for the habit of work. Pick one thing today, just one. Commit to it for 6 months, regardless of how you feel. Mastery isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the person who can stay in the room and work on a problem long after everyone else is left to find something more exciting. The world is full of brilliant people who died with a library of half-read books and a mind full of almosts. Don't be one of them. Stop being a collector of beginnings. Become an architect of endings. The world only rewards completion. Finish something today.